Okay, let's go ahead and kick it off because I know we have so much wisdom today with these guests that we have. For those of you who do not know me, my name is Angela Gill-Nelms, and I am the Managing Director of Biolocity at Georgia Tech and Emory. And we already had one session planned for this, and we were like, wait, there is so much interest right now and need to have these types of conversations. We're going to do a three-part series. So I am super excited to have this also co-moderated by Nasir. Nasir is the Director of Investments at Emory Investment Management. He is the Executive Director of Emory Biofoundry Institute, as well as an Associate Professor of Neurosurgery at Emory University. So I'm going to stop. And Nasir, do you want to kick us off?
Absolutely. No, it's an honor. Thank you so much for uh, lending your platform to us to make this happen, Angela. I would just say a few things, and I would love to hear from our distinguished guest today. Just, some uh, high-level frameworking in my mind. The biotech, medtech landscape, in my opinion, in Atlanta is in the verge of uh, beautiful transformation. You'll see sign everywhere. The soil is fertile. We just need to water it. And as such, we are honored today to have two distinguished guests from excellent, high-profile investment institutes, representative from Flagship Pioneering, Andre, the firm behind Moderna, and DCVC Bio, one of the top performing funds in this space. Kirsten, I think your investor from 2020 vintage has been very happy with the performance that you guys provided. It's been wonderful to watch. So before I do a quick intro of our panelists, I want to say our objective here in collaboration with Biolocity and its established beautiful platform is to provide exposure to what's happening in our larger Georgia Tech Emory ecosystem to these institutional investors while also providing an educational infrastructure and path for our future entrepreneurs who are going to build the next unicorn companies. I know, given some recent commercialization success of technologies out of Georgia Tech and Emory, there is a great interest in our larger community to get more deliberate about entrepreneurship and innovation. We started a new development fund at Emory, both on drug and device sides, EDDF and EBFI, which the latter I'm executive director of, which are designed really to bridge funding gap between traditionally small university grants to serious funding from institutional investors. So this is a two-way street. We believe it's designed to be mutually beneficial for all the stakeholders. I think, Angela, we should actually dedicate a session on all of these internal activities too for our broader audience. I don't know if you're doing an excellent job advertising it well. These are in infancy, so we can do a better job. But without further ado, let's get this session started. We have the privilege of having Dr. Kirsten Stead from DCVC Bio. Prior to co-founding DCVC Bio, Kirsten was an investor for a major life science firm, was a scientist, and a co-founded a series of life science companies over her career. Kirsten serves on several company boards and as a director of a non-for-profit boards. She holds a PhD in molecular biology and genetics and an MBA from the University of Alberta. We are also honored to have Andre Jaban, head of investor relationship at Flagship Pioneering. Andre has a stellar investment background from Merrill Lynch to Morgan Stanley. I just confirmed with him that he has been with Flagship for a little bit more than 2 years now. Kind of a different background, but very complementary for our discussion, which I love. Andre also supports Flagship Pioneering portfolio company capital raises. So very relevant in that regard. We have a series of questions for you too, but before that, maybe we can spend a few minutes going over your investment models and basically tell us more about your firm. So maybe I start with Andre. Would you please tell us a bit more about Flagship Pioneering?
Absolutely, and thank you, Angela. Thank you, Nasir, for including me in this conversation, and really happy to speak with you. Um, I joined Flagship 2.5 years ago after getting to know them as an investor. In my prior role at Morgan Stanley, I had the great opportunity to meet with many members of Flagship Pioneering over years and years, and built relationships that eventually led me to join the firm. Flagship was founded back in 2000, so in the last 25 years, we've founded and created over 110 companies. We've built a firm that looks much more like an operating company than a typical venture capital arm, and that we've brought in 550 people with a variety of backgrounds and expertise, all of whom are entrepreneurs at heart and want to build new platforms to ameliorate human health and planetary health. Um, a snapshot of Flagship today is a firm that files over 600 new and novel patents per year. We have 60 clinical and over 140 preclinical programs across the ecosystem. And as of our last fundraise, we raised $3.6 billion in our fund eight that closed last summer. And that's where we are.
Beautiful. Kirsten?
Right. Yeah. And thanks for having me, Angela and Nasir. Opposite sides of the coin here. So Kirsten said, a managing partner at DCVC Bio. So we tend to focus on, so we do a little bit of company formation that would resemble what Andre just described in terms of what Flagship does, but we do that in a strict minority. So opportunistically around individuals and academics or science that we run across that we're asked to sort of put things together around that to get them to patients or to agricultural customers. So we focus on life sciences. That means the mostly therapeutics, and then as similar to what Andrea described as planetary health. We've been doing that for a long time, and then most of our investments start at the pre-seed, seed, or Series A stage. And so we do syndicate with a number of other investors, and as such are more porous in the ecosystem in terms of backing and becoming part of startups, but similar to Flagship, both early stage.
Wonderful. So that's a great introduction. Angela, maybe we can start with questions.
This is the fun part. Let's do it. Okay. So we want to kick off much to what Nasir said a moment ago. Like, why are we doing this now? And why are we doing a three-part series? Okay. And it's because 2025 is proving to be an interesting year in the ecosystem. So my first question that we have for both of you, and maybe Kirsten, if you could go first and then follow up with Andre, is how have the changes in the ecosystem over the first half of 2025 impacted your future funding decisions?
So, there's two ways of looking at this. The one way is to assert that, venture, especially early stage venture, is somewhat uncoupled from the flailings of the public markets and essentially what goes on around that. However, while those flailings have become more recent for the general market, biotech has been in a sort of correction phase for the last 3-4 years. And so this, the half year of 2025 has been really, really challenging for biotech companies, life science companies in particular. If you're looking from the top down, I'm sure most of you know, so stock prices of small biotechs many of them are below the cash, they're trading below cash. And things like that, and that does eventually trickle down into the private market. So I would say, we're telling our companies mo money is better than no money, and we are working really hard to help our companies capitalize themselves and make sure that they are capitalized. As such, we're conviction investors, so we do reserve for the lifetime of the company in our funds, and so we're able to support them through that. But I think the trend is, for people thinking of starting or joining early stage biotechs right now, is there's a really large increased emphasis on security, meaning around people strategy and pipeline. So make sure you have the right people, make sure you have, your funding, you're capitalizing yourselves through into clinical data. And so there's things that have changed materially on strategy around how you would start a company now to ensure that you can be syndicated and funded all the way through, which I'm happy to talk about more if more details wanted, versus what it was like sort of 2-3 years ago.
Very interesting. Andre, how about you?
Yeah, look, I think in the public markets, Kirsten's said, been spot on. I think since the sell-off started in February of 2021, there's definitely been a big headwind in the public equity space. Just over the last 6 months, though, I think we've seen some headwinds in the industry that have hurt and are going to continue to hurt innovation coming out of the United States in a significant way. And I think as Americans, as human beings, we're definitely uneasy about the impact broadly to potential innovations that's going to save human lives in decades to come. So I think we're wary of what's happened. I think we're certainly always looking for different solutions and creative ways to ensure that our companies are going to continue to grow and thrive in any environment.
Great. So maybe I want to do a dive from this, high level 30,000 feet kind of view to some more practical stuff where I like to spend our time today, again, considering our audience, young academicians who want to start their career and do biotech, medtech entrepreneurship. So if you don't mind, I'm going to ask a few practical questions. I've been through this journey myself, and some of them coming from my personal experience. But maybe I start with trends. Are there any trends that you're seeing that's happening right now in specific disease areas, or the way that AI is disruptive, obviously, but well, share your wisdom. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but tell me what you're seeing that is interesting, and where are we going from here?
So do you want me to start?
Go ahead, please.
I think for for people starting out and for people, we call it, and I'm from one of these regions, these non-core regions. So if you're sitting outside of Boston or San Francisco or New York or San Diego, you've really got to think about, because you're naturally not bumping into people building companies on a day-to-day basis, trying to avoid them at lunch versus trying to meet them for lunch, your information is harder to get. In small companies, it's all gray science, meaning it's usually unpublished, right? It's usually people are working in stealth for a couple of years. Most of our companies are as well. And so you want to work on something that is not a problem on a commercial market today. You want to make sure that you have enough information that you're solving a problem that's going to be a problem in 10 years, right? And so that'll affect what targets you might choose to work on, what agricultural technologies you choose to work on. So it's really looking quite far ahead, to honor the Oilers as they're playing tonight. It's you need to skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it is today. That's really important. I find a lot of young entrepreneurs are working on problems as they see them projected today in terms of what's commercial or approved. And of course, we're playing, early stage venture, we're playing sort of for the 10-year future of what's going to be there. So that's one, I think, word of caution. On trends, on the other side, is a fantastic time, setting aside what Andre also alluded to, which is the issues we're having now around funding early stage science, which will affect us all in the future. But because we've been built on the back of, many decades of great science, there's emerging modalities that are absolutely fantastic. When I first started in venture, it was only you could work on small molecules and kinases, sort of on the therapeutic side. But now we have all sorts of manufactured modalities. We can bind disordered targets inside the cell. We can do all sorts of things. So it's actually a really wonderful time to be starting science and working on science and early stage biotech.
I want to come to you, Andre, but Kirsten, you mentioned two things that is intriguing. So if we can spend a minute on those. Comparing Boston, Bay Area with the rest of the country, tell us a little bit more about that. What are the main differences you see? And the second thing is, on the first part of what you mentioned, how can we unearth these gems? Like, we don't have a crystal ball. What are the metrics you're seeing to say, okay, this is the right area to work on because 10 years from now, I think it's going to be hot. at least I have high odds of success. How do you do that?
So I think the answer is really easy. You need to be networked into, well, there's two answers. There's the answer of you should move, right? And fall and I hate to say that, and I didn't believe that when I was a younger person, but it's if you really want to play in the big pond, no matter what area of expertise you want to be in, you need to be in the big pond. If you want the highest chance of success in your career in your lifetime. Failing that, you really need to have good connections in those spaces so that you can have a little peek into someone else's crystal ball. So, I always tell my companies, it's people first, then strategy, then execution, and never in any other order. And the challenge you face in a non-core geography is that you're forced to do strategy before you have the people. And so you need to try and close that gap as much as possible through networking, through your funders, your VCs, your people like yourselves who might know people outside who can link you up and link you up with people that could at least give you better advice, or that you could potentially hire and then use that as a step to move, or at least have a different location with the company. Certainly all of us these days have companies with sort of two head offices, and I've seen that work pretty well.
You kind of answer, that's fantastic. You kind of answer my Boston Bay Area versus Atlanta question too. But maybe can you tell me top three differences you see there and versus non-coring area?
Well, the top difference for sure is people, access to expertise, people who've been there, done that, right? Being at a startup is not a place to learn how to execute. You've only got usually enough capital for one or two programs or one or two commercial, efforts. And so you need to be able to bring, certainly we've seen young entrepreneurs that are the technical people that start off with the CEO and then they bring in other people around them as they grow and retreat back to a CTO position. That's very normal. Or they manage to bring in people around them, or they let the company go professionally with others. But that is the most important thing, is to have people around the table who've been there, who've done that, who know who to talk to for funding, who have that sort of network. Will make your life a lot easier.
Well, I was thinking, maybe we should have given a memo to Kirsten not to advertise outside of Atlanta, because that's opposite of what we're trying to do here. But
Yeah,
to your point, we are trying to build the ecosystem, but I experienced Bay Area myself too, and it's different. Just the energy is different, the interactions are different. There are some unique things about Atlanta that I think we can tap into, and we can build our own, ecosystem.
yeah.
But,
So we
yeah.
did,
Maybe
and,
listen, we can learn basically.
yeah. So we
What I'm-
have spun a company out of Emory. And that company's doing fine. And the technical team spun out, and they didn't move to a major center. They moved to RTP, where there is some access to executive leadership. And then one of our partners stepped in as the CEO, and they're very happy with that outcome. So it's absolutely possible. Yeah, you just need that interaction to work in a company, a non-centered company, or non-centered geography.
Got it. Andre, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, the entirety of Flagship's ecosystem is based in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and the power that has built is it has allowed all of our companies to be within a bike ride's distance from our HQ. That's been pretty powerful to allow people within our to travel to see one another and speak to one another in a more formal personal setting. It's allowed us to bring in talent from all over the world that wants to work with other great talent. And I think that that's a quite powerful thing. Now, that being said, we've obviously expanded what we can do on a global basis. And so we've opened our office in the UK, we've opened our office in Singapore, and that allows us to understand better what's happening around the world. But where it kind of expands into the United States, I think we're very happy having one big bubble in Cambridge.
Yeah. So I think, if you're starting a company in Emory, or Emory or Georgia or whatnot, is think about, you can make decisions, but think about how you can keep the most contact with those places. So either you're spending, so in the case of our Emory company, they're spending at least a week a month in Boston or San Francisco to sort of be, so it's a trade-off that you're going to have to make, and it's absolutely doable, but you've got to really think about keeping those contacts and expanding your networks outside of those areas.
I love this conversation. And also I want to look at the list to see if Donnie from City of Atlanta is here before he kills me and whatnot. I will say one of the things that I think is exciting as well is that we in the world have opportunity to learn from people who've done it really well. So I was just in Boston last month. I'm on the College of Engineering board, and we were meeting with many people within the city to say, what lessons can we learn from what you've built here? And how can we potentially collaborate and have some opportunities to grow together and also learn from what was done? So I think that is really exciting. Okay, so, Kirsten, one of the things I love about when we did our debrief before, you threw out a potential question and I wrote it down as quickly as I could type because I love this. It was, based on your experience, what are some paths and ideas that entrepreneurs think are great? We love our babies, but are major setbacks or mistakes. And so maybe we want to go Kirsten and then Andre on that.
Oh, I can't remember the context of that. So you mean like technical things that entrepreneurs think were good, but
Anything that you think when I work with teams at Biolocity and I'm meeting with the very first time ones who haven't done anything, they think, for example, their customer discovery, because they talk to 5 doctors at Emory, that's all of their customer discovery. And I'm like, no, it's not. I need you to get, and also Grady doesn't count because it's basically Emory. I need you to get to the West Coast. I need you to get to community, those types of things that you see in those young startups that end up being major setbacks.
right. Okay. Yeah, I remember this. So yeah, your point is absolutely right. And it feeds into the little bit of the diatribe I gave just slightly earlier, which is getting the right people around you overcome some of these. So if you're going into, I'm making things up, an oncology small molecule, or you've got a platform for AI for discovering antibodies or something like that, is to make sure that you understand, you have a network around you of people that has expertise in what targets are being prosecuted by companies that are non-public, right? And necessarily haven't published on what they're working on, what the different modalities are around technologies around that are in existence around antibodies and all of that sort of thing. It isn't just talking to, a few doctors. And so having the right people can be on that. And if you're can solve for that problem, but if not, you really need to do, as you said, you need to do your legwork. And the only way to do that is to physically bump into people, because most of these technologies are not in the public domain. So you need to physically be in Cambridge, avoiding people for lunch, right? Where the kinetic energy around that is important. If we joke that, if you want to get hit by a bus, you need to play in traffic. So you've got to go and play in the traffic, wherever that is for you, for your particular business.
Andre, what do you think about that?
Yeah, look, I think if we were to pick just one issue to focus on with every company that comes out of our explorations, is flexibility. That's one thing where we don't want a team to put all of their eggs in one basket, whether that's through selecting just one IND or one part of the body you want to focus on, whether it's your go-to-market strategy. You don't know what your business plan might be 2 to 3 to 4 years from now. And so how do you plan ahead of that with multiple options at your feet? And then the last piece on that is go beyond your internal team. We are going to bring all of these people to you as resources, whether they're people on the team here at Flagship, whether they're folks outside of Flagship, but in our ecosystem that you can go and talk to, whether they're our partners within multiple large pharma companies, our partners in foreign governments, our partners around the world can help you make decisions and can help bring insight into your business.
Amazing. Nasir, no pressure. It's your turn.
No, it's again, I want to move eventually to more practical aspects of starting a company. And I'd like to pose a question to both of you. And there are a series of questions I want to ask. So start with, red flags. When a deal is being presented to you, what are the tell me, how do you approach things? I think there are two different mindsets. Let me look for things that would make this not work, or look for things that would make this fantastic. Tell me, are you looking for former or latter? And for either one, what are you looking for? Red flags and green flags.
After
Maybe
you, Andre.
Yeah, Andreas, we start with you this time.
Awesome. Well, as you know, we don't source any deals from outside of the four walls of Flagship. Rather, we have a team of over 220 scientists, MDs, and PhDs that work inside Flagship who take this entrepreneurial spirit and spend their time inventing and innovating on these ideas. The first step of these ideas is to pressure test what we call explorations through hypothetical conversations across our ecosystem to ideate on the initial what if question. We then proceed to enter the wet lab and run these killer experiments on these explorations. If in this process we fail to kill an idea, and through our team's best efforts, these prototype companies, these protocos, fail to die, that's when we take it forward to a new co in our portfolio. Now, there's still a lot of work to do after that, but these first two exercises allow us to whittle down the opportunities to the ones that would be the right fits in our portfolio.
Great. Kirsten?
I'll build on what Andre said from our perspective. So I think, if you're talking about, say, spinning a company out or technology out of an academic institution, for example. So, one of the challenges is that a lot of academics think that, 90% of the work has been done and a company needs to just polish up the remaining 10%. And of course, the entrepreneur looks at a technology coming out of a university and says, oh my goodness, okay, it's 10%, maybe 5% there, and 95% of the work needs to be done. And so a level of self-awareness of that is a green flag. A self-awareness that you cannot stand on both sides of the line. So you either want to stay an academic or you're going to leave your academic position to start a new company is a very typical sort of, I don't know, mistake is a strong word, but assumption that doesn't set you up for success if at the end of the day you want to commercialize or build a drug, or build an agricultural product, right? You need to hand it off to professionals or become a part of that professional team. And you leave your academic position, and then you get and failing that, just a really good level of self-awareness of what it's going to take to get your product, whatever it is, into the clinic is a really big deal. So that would be a green flag. The red flag would be the opposite, right? And any sort of like arrogance around that is a problem. We have a lot of opportunities, right? We look at like 1,500 in-depth opportunities a year. And so that's just throwing that out there because some people don't appreciate that if there's a big impedance to something, we have a lot of other options. And I'm not saying that to be arrogant about it. I'm just saying to keep that in perspective that working with you has to be fun. We have really challenging jobs. Things we work on for many years fail. And so we've learned over the years that, red flags early on are usually just don't go away. And so to make yourself porous, malleable, flexible, as Andre said, and self-aware is really important. Those are the best green flags to have a starting conversation. And even if we don't continue on with your technology because it's a poor fit at that time, we keep in touch with all of those academics or students or research associates or whatnot because we want to stay in touch with good people.
I am so happy to hear you say that, Kirsten. I will tell you one of the things in me taking over Biolocity earlier this year is I instituted for all of the teams, and I want this to get out to Georgia. I want everyone to know this. When these teams are going through competitive, trying to get into our cohort, I'm actually analyzing their coachability and I'm ranking them and also telling our oversight committee, okay, here's our technology that they just presented to you on pitch day. And here's a coachability rating, and these are the challenges that we saw. And I think that the faster that entrepreneurs can understand that we're like partnerships and then this together and should be very coachable from experts, the faster they are to leading towards success.
Yeah. We, people fail to appreciate we have lifetime relationships with our entrepreneurs, right?
Mm.
We've been with them through the times they've gotten married and had kids, and this isn't necessarily the same as tech investing, which is more competitive. Life sciences is much more cooperative.
Mm.
And so going in with that view, I think, is really important.
I love all of these comments. The emphasis on the fact that a lot needs to be done after you publish your Nature and Science paper. Don't think this is like, because in academia, it's a major accomplishment. It would set your career. But really, in order to translate technology, a lot more needs to be done. And I agree with you. Probably it's only 10% at that point. And your emphasis on, you didn't say anything about technology from green or red flag standpoint. The emphasis was mainly on team, which I understand, and the dynamic. Let me just ask a follow-up question on that then. That's been a struggle, and maybe the differentiator that I see in Boston and Bay Area versus other places is that finding that co-founders who bring in the business operational cohesiveness and partnership with you. Tell us a little bit about how to build a team if you're a scientific co-founder. What are you looking for in a team? Maybe Kirsten, you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, ideally, so if it's early stage, I'll answer this in two ways because we do two different things. So if we're being asked to come in and help start a company, or we're pulling out a technology to start a company, we are happy to bring the team to the technology. So if it's a great platform technology, so I'm in the middle of doing this now, and I've just lost my screen. Can you still see me?
We lost your video too, but we can hear you.
Okay. So if we're in that position, we will bring the team to you. We have a cohort of operating partners that have started companies before, have built, say, pharmaceutical products or agricultural products before and taken them to market. And so we're happy to do that. If it's a standout technology there, we'll meet technology. So for us, that means we like deep tech, we like big swings for the fence. So we're happy to do that. That's been done many times before. If it's an established team, what we want to see is the team has an earned experience that will allow them to execute on an earned idea or concept. Failing that, if the team isn't fully built out, which is pretty typical, a flexibility to understand and ask and say, part of the reason we're talking to VCs is that we know we're going to need a CEO. We know we're going to need a chief medical officer. We know we're going to need I'd like to be the CEO for a bit, but then I'd like to step back when we declare a development candidate or whatever the case is. That sort of conversation, that's A-okay. So I would say all through that, through those conversations is absolutely fine. And we also see the very far end of that where we have, a Series A company that's very built out. We've known the entrepreneur, or they're very skilled and they know what they're going to be doing within the bounds of still, because we always invest in platforms, and so there's still going to be some flexibility there. Often they haven't declared their lead and whatnot, and they're still trying to figure that out. So that whole dimension is just fine.
Very interesting. So I think, Andre, I will.
I could jump
Yeah.
in on that same
Go ahead.
topic, right? Like, if you think about the two aspects you mentioned, people and technology. On the people side, what Flagship's built in terms of an HR team that is searching for folks to join us on the C-suite level as bench scientists and anywhere in between, we're able to bring the right talent for every one of our companies at the right point in time. And so imagine you're a startup and just getting your exploration and protocol off the ground. You cannot afford to go and get the best talent as your CFO or head of IP and so on and so forth. So Flagship actually pushes those resources to you from inside our functional expertise. On the technology side, we want all of our entrepreneurs and scientists to embrace that. We want them to work with our pioneering intelligence group. This is an AI and ML focused team that is helping to build the tools that enhance the platform, enhance what every modality is capable of doing. This team has successfully built a variety of tools, including agentic co-pilots, to strengthen what our companies can do, and to build other things that allow them to get there faster while burning less capital. And in this environment, both those things are quite key.
I love that. And I think there's this a mentality I love being an entrepreneur is also realizing who's the best person for the job at this stage in the company. Who's the best CEO at this stage or fractional or whatever in all these roles. And also understanding when now we're above our, past our skis and we need to reach out. And I think that collaboration I'm a big believer, and I want to talk about a little bit about VC partnership with their startups. After doing a few startups, I've seen where sometimes it works really great and other times it's like you're butting heads between them. And so one question someone in the audience, an attendee asked, and it goes back to the idea of being coachable and being flexible. And so their question was, how does an academic entrepreneur signal with investors or partners that they have a clear vision and they're flexible or porous? Their fear is that it seems like there's risk of appearing confused and unfocused and probably not adequate.
Yeah, I think that's actually really simple, is to just tap into your scientific instinct, which is to state clearly what you know and what you've experimentally determined, and then state clearly what you don't know and what hasn't been experimentally determined. It's really simple. The eventuality of putting that technology into a company, you might end up in a place you never thought was possible, right? When that technology is put into someone else's hands. And that's okay. That's totally okay. And in fact, a VC might, we've done this several times, is, we might see your technology and say, oh my goodness, actually, this would be highly complementary to another technology we have, and we can make it bigger and make the platform more robust by putting things together. That happens a lot. And so just clearly state what you know versus what you don't know. What data you've recapitulated in your hands. Was the data done, completed as CRO? Were there, if you were given an extra few $1 million, what would be the next experiment? Were there any experiments you wanted to do that would have proved that the technology doesn't work, but you didn't do? How did you, what were your positive controls? Did you, all of those types of things? That's the type level of conversation to have. And I think people who are used to doing this type of things and having these interactions don't often confuse that with being unfocused, because they're not expecting the academic to come up with a fully baked company all the way to the end. It's probably not realistic. On the other side of that, the red flag would be an academic who conceals information, is tight with information, or even worse, you can show that they haven't recapitulated, they haven't repeated it, or they haven't really tried to disprove themselves wrong. They've been fearful of that, and so there's that experiment left to run. Or the obvious arrogance is really challenging. I would layer that over as well with, we would be silly to think that, or not mention that, some universities are easier to work with in terms of getting licenses out than others, and they always need the help of the academic to push things into help the VC get, or help the group, whatever, the syndicate or whatever it is, or the new entrepreneur that's been picked, to help pull that out of the university within reason, because that can get really bogged down if the academic is not involved. No matter what the rules are around academics interacting with their IP licensing, there's always roles for them to play to make that easier. A lot of academic institutions want to see, when someone gets interested in something, they want to see that going to a bid, and will involve multiple different venture groups. I've never seen that work out well for the academic. It's the relationship and putting their technology in a place that they're happy with and that they can have an interaction with going forward that is probably the most important thing.
Oh, I just want to put like exclamation points when you said the relationship part, because that is key in all of this. It is building a relationship and selecting the people that and the teams that you want to work with long term. And I will say also, I would encourage anyone who's academic and they're in their institution, build a relationship with the person who's managing your IT in your Office of Tech Transfer, and not have it be just an email or a submission or something like that, but actually build a relationship, work with them, invite them. I mean, I encourage in Biolocity, we have several of ours that join calls with your GEs and Siemens and all of that, because they can actually be a partner and not a blocker, which is what I think, Kirsten, you see in those other areas. Okay,
Kirsten, I want to double click on this was very insightful, and I want to double click on it if you don't mind. Maybe I frame it in this way. What are the gating functions that you use when you're seeing technology being presented to you? In other words, when would be the best time for a faculty academicians to come to you guys? Is there a checklist you look at? Oh, IP is done, paper is published, a company has been formed already. Tell us, what are the must-haves before they have conversation with you?
I mean, it's a little bit of all the above, but we have relationships with a number of academics that reached out to us when the first day of their academic position and said, I would like to start a company. This is the area I'm going to work in. Is there anything I should work on? Anything I can avoid? Any companies I can interact with? I'm working in induced proximity. So I would say that is great for us to get to know you. And it's always, we slot all of that back in a deep neuron to think about as we go forward, as we run into other things, all the way to, if you're going to take it all the way to a company's already been formed, really make sure you know what we've seen things go wrong at that stage for people who are inexperienced. So the formation wasn't set up properly. But if you want to set up the company and do the license and get the technology out of the university and it just sits in the company, that's also great, right? We can work with that, a clean cap table, as long as you've done it correctly, which for the most part you can. So I would say anywhere along that spectrum is fine.
Maybe Andrea, that was great. Thank you. Andrea, I will pose this in a slightly different way, knowing flagship mechanism is different. When you're looking at technologies, are they things that you consider early on in order to kill that technology, the term that you use? Are you thinking about market size, clinical impact, again, reimbursement, regulatory? Give us some insight on factors that you guys look at to prioritize things.
Look, I think the only category that we're really focused on at the earliest stage of the explorations is how far-fetched is the idea. We are looking for opportunities that are so far out of what is currently being done in big pharma, across university labs, across academia, that we want to be far out in that white space. So none of those questions are even answerable at that point in time. We're more looking at, looking for ideas that are way beyond the limits of what's been done in the market.
I like that. It's counterintuitive actually, because we always look at what is practical here. You're saying go wild, which is a right mindset. I love that.
And that's what the flagship motto is, working future backwards. What if this could happen? Then what would be the outcome of that? Then what would be the value of that? And that's really the way we're built, is to go from the outside and look what's not been done and try and build something new.
Would you say this is a psychology of venture mainly because we are looking for unicorns, and instead, if it doesn't have that kind of far-fetched, amazing, out there kind of idea, you're not going to accomplish that unicorn status?
I think there's ways to do everything. It's just this happens to be the way that Flash was built, and Flash has been successful.
Yeah, you've got to know who you're speaking to. So we're more similar to that. We like big ideas. We like broad platforms. We like, we'll put things together. and then pick specific programs to work on, usually post unless there's really some obvious application. However, there are VCs that only do pipeline investing, right? So you have a novel kinase, you have a novel, agricultural product or something like that. So you just have to pick the right people to interact with that are along the lines of what your technology is.
I love that that's what you just said. I'm jumping in,
No,
Nasir.
go, please.
I love that you said that because Kirsten, one of the things I am constantly saying to teams, not all money is good money. You have to make sure whoever you partner with the VC actually aligns with who you are and your whatever your success looks like. So my question to you is, what should entrepreneurs look for in their VC partnership?
The obvious one is the one we just mentioned. So is that you need to understand, like, is that venture capital firm, do they only do platforms? Do they only do pipeline investments, meaning they put money behind particular products? So a particular development candidate or whatnot. So that would be the first thing, and some do a mix of both. Rapport, really important. Staging is important. So right now it's really important you get the syndicate built pretty early on. So maybe you don't want to go to just a pre-seed venture firm that does sort of one investment and then relies on you to raise the rest of the rounds. So maybe you want to, or maybe that's what you want. You just want a little seed in it. So, you need to know how much are their checks, how much do they reserve? Are they going to bring other expertise to the play, and are they strategically aligned? If you're a very experienced team, perhaps going with a generalist investor is fine for you. But if you're less experienced, then maybe you want an investor that's really deep in your sector so that they can help you with people and technology and all the other things that we do on a day-to-day basis.
Angela, what do we have from our audience? If none, or we can
We've
move
answered a
forward.
couple of them. I will say that another one that's still outstanding is directly to Flagship is Andre. Actually, let me get to the question that I think I already closed out on accident. It was really trying to understand what your setup is. So for example, do you have a whole bunch of scientists there that are coming up with ideas, and then you pick the idea and then you move forward? And then the follow-up question to Flagship was, if you go to Flagship with a big idea that's just an idea, who owns the idea at that point? And I think that's the difference between our dynamic here. So Andre, do you want to kick off, and then maybe Kirsten talk about from your perspective?
So if you start at the beginning, Flagship has, like I mentioned, over 220 scientists that are consistently asking these far-fetched what if questions. This process allows our entrepreneurial scientists to go through the hypothesis, test it out, strengthen certain concepts of it, and then see if we can kind of imagine a breakthrough from this. And this exercise is called an exploration, and we go through about 80 to 100 of those every year. Promising explorations become prototype companies or protocos. They're assigned a number based on their place in the series of Flagship Labs companies. So I mentioned today we've created over 100 of them. I think the latest version of this is FL114. And these concepts, these protocos enter the wet lab, and they've got a finite period of time and a finite pool of capital to run these killer experiments. If at the end of this point in time they fail to kill the idea, then the idea is moved over to what we consider a new company. If it turns out that this what if has a real value and fails to die in the wet lab, this new co moves forward to develop a proprietary platform that will deliver years of new products, years of new breakthroughs, and a whole lot of intellectual property, which is protected by the moat that we've set for them. Flagship creates somewhere between the 4 to 8 new codes every year, and we manage that process again with our resource allocation committee, providing important resources at every step of the way of that company's growth, all the way to finally a growth co that is now a proven company. It's got a professional management team, a professional board of advisors, and they've been able to grow in a way that they can kind of hire a lot of their own talent internally. And so that's what we've kind of broke out that process for you.
Okay, I'm gonna go, this is a really long question, but I'm gonna go ahead and read it and then let either of you jump in for your perspectives on it.
I want to have a chance to have one last question also, Angela. So
Okay, this is this question, and then hey, my guest moderator who's crushing it gets the final question on it. Okay, so with this one, with the macro backdrop of uncertainty in biotech markets, funding seems to move preferably towards proven targets with conventional modalities, for example, via in-licensing, clinical stage, things from China, and financing. But that poses the question of, is there enough early stage capital funding for novel targets, modalities, and indications? And how do you see the next few years playing out from a venture financing standpoint for platforms versus pipelines, broad versus niche indications, et cetera?
Maybe I'll start. It's a fantastic question, something that our team is hyper focused on, especially today. Like all firms evolving through our different environments, Flagships looked at the current market and thought of different ways to think about our company growth and our continued financings. We're looking at three broad opportunity sets. I think one is these innovation supply chain partnerships. These are deals in which large pharma companies come to Flagship to access all of our companies in the ecosystem and all the different assets they can create. And these partnerships allow our companies to drive certain assets they may not otherwise have done. And so they partner with our group, Pioneering Medicines, which is a 125 person organization within Flagship focused on single asset creation. And so these ISC partnerships are one way we've looked to solve the funding problem. The second is in global expansion. I mentioned earlier that although our hub and all of our companies are in Cambridge, we have an office in London and an office in Singapore, and that's allowed us to build lasting relationships with sovereigns and corporates and other institutions all over the world and tap into those pools of capital. And lastly, partnerships, not only on the asset side, but directly into our companies. So having large pharma, these companies come in and be direct investors into many of our platforms has helped bridge the funding gap that you're seeing in the current environment.
And yeah, so the question is, directed at what we sort of started this conversation, which is the pinch in the market right now is really at the top. It's at the later stage investors. So if you look at, us, we're seed Series A, Flagships, even earlier. And then you go to companies who prefer to do Series Bs in the middle, and then you have what we call crossover investors that they want to buy the last round of private and they invest into public markets. When the top doesn't open there, capital doesn't get recycled. And so those firms that want to do later stage stuff are really the observation is correct, have become more focused on pipelines, more clinical ready assets, things that they know that they can turn over in the M&A market if there is no IPO market. For early stage, there is still a lot of capital at the early stage. That topping out. So the biopharma companies are still very active in M&A. And so that is the way to recycle capital if there is no IPO market. And so I would say, it's just a different type of investing per a prior comment I think both of us have made, which is know who your investor is. If you're really, a pre-seed company, you're not going to go to like a Samsara Capital or those types of things. You want to go to people who focus on that. And there is a lot of capital in the market. It's not 2008 where there was just an actual, drought of capital. There's still a lot of early stage funds that have raised that are funding we're working with a lot of groups right now, starting companies at the very early stage. So I wouldn't worry too much about that, but it is a trend. It will continue for a bit until it's worn out, but those deals are really expensive, right? Those groups are paying, you know, $200-300 million for those later stage assets and hoping to turn them over to recycle some capital.
Great. I know we are 2 minutes to top of the hour, and this is kind of a philosophical, bigger question. So I don't know if you have enough time, but maybe give me your quick gut reaction. It might not sound positive, but I think it would have positive outcome for people to understand how to navigate this. How would you know when to give up? This is something that I struggle with. You're working on technology for years and years and years, and you have other options, but it's your baby. Or how would you approach that, or when do you do that? Kirsten, maybe you first.
So number one, run the empirical experiments that you're afraid to run that will terminate the project. Run them as soon as you can. Do not avoid them. Number one, that is the best advice. Number two is your career is first, and what you're working on today is second to that. So yes, we see people hang on too long, but if you're not receiving the right flags in the market, you know, fundings, can't get things funded. So assuming your technology works and you've run those experiments, then, you know, take the cues from the market and value your career over the technology, because if you do a good job of that, you'll find yourself in a better place. There's always going to be lots of things to work on. There's never a shortage of ideas. And it's sort of sad sometimes to see really bright minds getting bogged down in something where they have a lot of sunk cost. And they're not, you know, they want to see it live. So there's lots of options for good technologies to go into better, more productive places, joining them into other companies and things like that. So I would say those two things are just good frameworks to think about.
Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah,
Andre, close us.
that's a great place to end. I completely agree. I think running those killer experiments right up front, right before a lot of time and capital has been sucked into idea, are critical. And I think you don't see enough of that today. People try to keep their, you know, dreams alive, if you will, and running those killer experiments up front are the best way.
Thank you.
Amazing.
See-
This has been everything I was hoping for. Did I just cut you off, Kirsten? Were you going to say something? Okay.
No, I was going to tease Nasir, but I can do it another time.
No, at all means, go ahead and do that now. Seriously, we know that both of you are incredibly busy, and I have this mentality that everything you say yes to means you had to say no to something else. So thank you for saying yes to having this conversation with us today. It has been absolutely amazing. You did not disappoint.
I agree. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. And for everyone still there, I put the link in the chat to remind you to go ahead and subscribe to Bylocity's Bench to Market series. You can go in and find additional information. We're really just driving towards trying to help build entrepreneurs to be the best they absolutely can be. So thank you so much and have an amazing day.